Welcome to our talk, ArcGIS Pro Level Up with Python. My name is Brian Klee.
And I'm Kimberly McCarty.
I'm a software developer on the Python team.
And I'm a product engineer, so I do his testing.
Yeah. Let's just dive right into it. So the things we'll be looking at today are the Python language features, what is included in our ArcGIS Pro Python libraries, what we include in our ArcGIS Pro Py 3 conda distribution, some of the new features that are coming with Python 3.11, which will be coming in the next Pro release. And then we'll jump into some demos with the Windows terminal, conda and package management, and some ArcPy tips and tricks. So why level up? Well, here's two quotes to help encourage you. One is, "Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others," by Winston Churchill. And another is, "All the best games are easy to learn and difficult to master," by Nolan Bushnell. Taken another way, you could say Python is the worst language for programming, except for all the others. Not Winston Churchill. And then all the best programming languages are easy to learn and difficult to master, not Nolan Bushnell. So why Python? Well, in general, we say that Python's easy to learn because it's a high-level natural language syntax. It looks like English when you write it. As well, we call it a batteries-included language. That means the core Python library itself is very small, but it itself ships with a standard library of more than 200 core packages and modules at your disposal. These are things that you never even thought about, like math. When you import math, that's another module shipped with Python itself. Or an exception class. Those are all different modules shipped with Python. And when I say it's easy to learn, hard to master, hard to become an expert in, that's because even though it's a high-level, easy-to-read syntax, once the interpreter walks through your code, it actually translates it into bytecode, which then ends up getting run in a C Python implementation. And understanding that translation layer can make you an expert in Python. It makes you more efficient at writing your code and writing better code in Python. And so that's kind of some of the things we'll be talking about today. With our Pro and server installs, we ship something called the ArcGIS Pro Py 3 environment. This is a conda environment, which itself has more than 260 packages also included out of the box. So not only when you install Pro do you get Python and its 200 modules, you also get these 260 extra packages. As well, you can install the Deep Learning Frameworks installer, which will get you an additional 250 packages. So that's a lot of Python. Of those 500 plus packages, Esri itself ships and produces two ArcGIS Python libraries, we call them. One is called ArcPy, and the other is called the ArcGIS API for Python. I think one of the most common questions we get at our booth is people coming up to our ArcPy booth and saying, okay, I've heard about ArcPy, I've heard about the ArcGIS API for Python, but what exactly is the difference? When would I use one over the other? Can I use them both at the same time? And the answer to that is yes, you can use them both at the same time. And just generally, I would say ArcPy itself is a wrapper around Pro and server code. So it allows you to interact with your Pro and server code, like your maps and your projects, directly through easy-to-write Python code. It also gets you access to those 2,000 plus geoprocessing tools that we give you. So not only can you get those 500 Python packages, but you can also access those 2,000 geoprocessing tools. On the other hand, the ArcGIS API for Python is a much more modern Python-only library. This is not coupled to any software that we ship. You can install the ArcGIS API for Python totally independently of any software of any license. You can deploy it anywhere because of that. And it's very lightweight, and it's used for analyzing spatial data. And I'd say it's also really good for managing like online content, managing admin type things, giving permissions, taking away permissions. And that's when using both ArcPy and the ArcGIS API for Python will make you a better GIS programmer, because you can really do everything with Python with both of those and all those other packages we ship. So when talking about ArcGIS Pro Py 3, every release we go through and we update this collection of 200 or so, 250 packages. Of course, we take care of security updates. We hit all the high-ranking CVEs, make sure those are all taken care of or not applicable. Another package that we've added that's coming is called Pure Magic, which is a really cool file identification program or project. And also Python 3.11 is coming. This will be on our next ArcGIS Pro that we ship. And with that, we're having some big updates to some of our core packages, like Arrow. So just a couple of releases ago, I think we were on Arrow 1, Arrow 2, Arrow 3. Now we're shipping Arrow 15. As well, we've upgraded to modern Pandas 2, NumPy 1.24. And if you care about deep learning, we have some huge stack improvements coming to the deep learning stack. Previously, our deep learning stack was all rooted on an older CUDA and CUDA toolkit version and CDN version and an old PyTorch and TensorFlow version. Now with this next release, we'll be updating to the latest, well, not the exact latest, but the latest that works with our humongous conglomeration of packages, sets of CUDA toolkit, CDNN, PyTorch, TensorFlow. And we're adding LangSam and segment anything support, which has been a huge request from some of our users. Now, that's a lot of packages, and you might have no idea where to start there. You might have no idea how those can help you or what they might be used for. You might not even realize that you have them at your disposal. And that's where this handy sunburst diagram comes into play. You can either go directly to this link. Your camera should be able to take a QR code. I can also pull this up at the end if that's easier. I'll let some of your cameras connect for a second. I'm not sure how actually this will look on mobile. Haven't tried that. But once you do pull it up, it's going to look like this, a giant sunburst. This is made in D3. This just is pulling in all of our packages that we ship in that ArcGIS Pro Pi 3 environment and semantically organizing them in categories. So things like web, security, data science, we can click on this tab and all of a sudden it breaks it out even more into different things. So we could say, maybe I only care about data analysis. Now we can see these are the core data analysis packages that we give you at your disposal. Things like Pandas, NumPy, PyArrow, Xarray, SASP, those sorts of things. So yeah, just in general, this sunburst diagram is a really good way to, if you don't know what's at your disposal, this can help you figure out what to use and when to use it. So maybe you're working with data and you're specifically interested in compression, like me, one of the few people. You can see, of course, we have some of the old standards, but now our biggest one we support is Z standard compression. And these slices they are bigger based on the stars on their GitHub pages. So that also kind of gives you an idea of what the community is using to help you figure out what to use in your own work. I don't think this is updated for our latest release yet, so I do need to update that, but this should be current as of 3.2. But yeah, maybe you're curious what kind of Esri packages we ship. There's that ArcPy package I was talking about and the ArcGIS API. So moving back, let's talk about some of the Python language features. If you've been using Pro for a while, you know that we've had Python in Pro since at least 2.0, where we had Python 3.5 included. After Pro 2.0 and 2.1, we upgraded to 3.6, and that was when we were on our longest stretch of one Python version. From 2.1 to 2.6, we were on 3.6. Since then, we've had this continual cadence of basically every 3 releases, we upgrade our Python Python version itself. And that's the current plan as well for Pro 3.3 to release with Python 3.11.8. And you might be wondering why that matters at all. And that's because Python itself has a release cycle that we have to follow. So if we looked at that Python 3.6 that we were on for so many versions, that actually was end of life in 2021. That means Python Software Foundation is no longer publishing any security patches or even really caring about the security of that project. It's just third party at that point, open source people that are doing that work. On the other hand, we're now on Python 3.9 in our current release of Pro 3.2.2 and the accompanying server release. But you might say, well, why can't we just stay on that? Well, if you look at this, it's actually going to run out of security fixes mid-2025. So if we release server in a couple months and then say, well, you're not going to have security fixes in a year, that's just not acceptable. We have to have our projects be long-term supported and have security fixes for as long as possible. So that's why we're targeting Python 3.11 right now. It's currently in bug fix, and it'll be receiving core security fixes through 2027. Next release we'd probably upgrade to would probably be Python 3.13 or something like that. You might be wondering, why don't we just jump to 3.12? That's green. That looks good, right? Well, of those 500 packages that I was talking about earlier, every single one of those has to support the Python version that we're upgrading to. So a lot of times we want to upgrade to the newest Python version, but we're actually held back because core projects that we rely on, like PyTorch or something, isn't supported on that new Python version yet. So we're actually in this sort of waiting game where we have to wait until the whole community has adopted this new Python version before we can fully adopt it as well. So I've been talking a lot about Python 3.11. You might be wondering what that gets you, what kind of improvements. In general, one of the biggest things that it'll get you is better error messages, more informative tracebacks, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, and faster code execution. And that's what most people are actually concerned about and excited about with these new Python releases, is this faster CPython project, they call it, and I'll talk about that more in a second. There's also more typing features, which continues to be a big seller in the Python adoption industry. In fact, Python 3.11 has the most typing features being added to it from any release so far. As well, native TOML support. I work a lot with TOML configuration files, so for someone like me, this is great. The TOML lib is being added to that Python standard library, so now a Python setup.py, for example, will be able to reach out to a TOML config instead of any other sort of config that you're relying on. So better error messages, what do I mean by that? Previously, we had tried to backport some of this functionality into our Py 3.9 that we shipped, but it wasn't as good as what you'll see once you actually have the Py 3.11 default support. So let's take this inverse.py function, very, very simple, taking an inverse of a number. I think you could probably already see the error. You can't take an inverse of 0. So if we run this, you'll immediately see the tracebacks look a little bit different than what you might be used to. I've bolded these carets and these squiggly tilde lines, and basically that's the new Python 3.11 feature that they added, is this, before you would see carets across the entire line, which just tells you it's somewhere on this line that the error happened. Now it's smart enough to exactly tell you which function, the inverse of 0, caused the error. And then on the next line, you can see the tildes and this caret pointing at the division sign, telling you this is the exact point that this error got thrown from this operation. Now, this is a very simple example, but I think you can imagine if you had much more complicated code, how much more helpful this will be in your tracebacks. Finally, faster code execution with Python 3.11. This is a very exciting thing in Python that's happening right now. Historically, people have used Python because, like I said, it's easy to read it, see that it's Pythonic, that you can just follow these natural language words. However, it did have to eventually get translated through bytecode into C. And it's been slower than the same code you could have written in C from the first place. So a lot of people have still stayed on the C, C++ side of things because it's just faster than writing the same code in Python. And when I say faster, I mean, we're talking about computers now, so it's not really a huge difference in what you'll see in your day-to-day. But what they've done is Microsoft is actually investing in this faster CPython project, which has a goal of getting Python to be 5 times faster than it currently was at the start of the project. And that might seem like a lofty goal and unattainable, but it was actually originally called the Shannon Plan, and it's actually being co-led by Mark Shannon and Guido, which is the founder of Python. So I have full confidence that they're going to be able to hit this 5 times goal within a matter of years. And Python 3.11, the reason why this is so exciting is it's the first release of Python to have some of these faster CPython gains in it. Specifically, there's quicker bytecode generation now. Before, when Python was interpreted into bytecode, it was the same way every single time. And that's why sometimes that C, if you were actually a really good C programmer, you could write better code that would produce better bytecode and run faster. Now, Python 3.11 has this neat function where if a function ends up getting run 8 times into memory, it's going to automatically adapt and optimize its bytecode to run faster. That being said, you don't need to go through your code and make sure your loops are running 8 times or something like that. I don't think you need to do that. I think you'll just passively see these faster bytecode generation improvements in your day-to-day work. In benchmarks, people are seeing that CPython 3.11 is about 25% faster than Python 3.10, which is a huge improvement. I would say take benchmarks with a grain of salt. These benchmarks are done on a very specific system, on a very specific set of data. It's better to benchmark on your own system with your own workflows to see what kind of gains it could expect from getting this. We are seeing similar 20 to 25% improvement in some of our internal testing. I'll jump over to some demoing now. I'm going to show off some of the Windows Terminal and Package Manager features that we've added in the past few releases. Let me pull up Pro. Let me go back to just the main Pro window as if we just launched it. As you know, for many releases, we had a Python backstage area. I think at 3.0, we renamed it to the Package Manager. Now you can go to here and basically get any sort of package management features you might need. Something that you might have only been able to do previously through fancy conda commands, you can mostly do through the interface. As soon as we launch this, we see this yellow heading, cannot modify the default environment, ArcGIS Pro Pi 3. That's because we always want you to have a state you can go back to and have a stable set of software. If you modify ArcGIS Pro Pi 3, you can end up getting in a case where really the only way back to a safe state is uninstalling the software, and you don't really want to get into that sort of workflow. It's much better to create a workflow where you create a clone first, modify your clone, and then if you mess up anything, you can always go back to the safe state of ArcGIS Pro Pi 3. So how do you create clones? You click on this little cog to open your environment manager. You'll see we have all sorts of symbols on the left. We have a green check mark saying this is our active environment. We have some yellow warning signs saying version mismatch. That's telling us that these versions of these environments were most likely written against an older Pro. Previously, if you had like an old Pro environment, a conda environment that you made, and you upgraded to the latest Pro, you were kind of out of luck. You had to recreate that environment in the latest Pro painstakingly. Now we have this handy upgrade button over here, which will actually create a copy of your environment locally so that you can always go back to it as well. And then it will attempt to upgrade it to the latest Pro versions in all cases so that you could then just use that environment in new Pro. You can also see, let's see, you can create a clone by doing ... clone, name it however you want. I've already done one recently, so we can look down here in the taskbar to see that the clone succeeded. If you hover over a task, you'll get more information about it, which can be helpful if it didn't work for some reason. This is the actual command prompt that is getting run to perform the task, so you can see everything that it did. Let's switch to that new clone I made. You can see when you switch your active environment, the only environments that are able to be imported will be in bold. The other ones will actually have a little warning telling you they're broken or a version mismatch or something like that. We'll go down to this newest Pro clone I made. In previous releases of Pro, if you switched your clone, you would have to restart Pro to fully activate it. You don't have to do that anymore. It's all done for you. So now that we're in this active Pro clone, we can see all of our packages we have installed. We can go over here to add packages to see every single package we could install, more than 10,000. Let's say we want Spider, the Spider IDE. This is something that we've added more support for in Pro 3.2. And moving on, we'll make sure that all Pro releases always work with the latest Spider. So here we can just click Install. It'll be like, yes, I agree, install. And now we can see the new task gets added. And if you hover over it, we can see the results as it starts to reach out to the internet, which might be slow because of the current internet. That being said, you can do everything that I just showed you from the command prompt. And you can probably do it a little bit faster. So with Pro and Server, we ship something called the Python command prompt. You can find that in your ArcGIS program group, right here, Python command prompt. This is what it will look like. And you can see that it launched into my Pro clone. So it was smart enough to look at what the active environment was last in Pro, and it's going to launch it in here from that active environment. And from here, basically, we're doing everything with commands instead of with the fancy UI. So let's say we wanted to see all our environments. We'd say conda env list. This will list out every environment on my system that it can find, including the paths and the simple name to get to it. Another common command is conda list and then like a name of a package. Because if you just say conda list, it's going to give you every single package in that environment, which is way too many. So let's just say we care about notebooks. You can just say conda list notebook. This will just list out the notebook version that's installed in that specific environment. Now let's say you wanted to list multiple things. Then we get into regex territory. So we open quotes, notebook, we'll do a pipe and say ArcPy. This is going to say conda list this or this, a notebook or ArcPy. Now we'll see we have our lists of ArcPy and notebook in one list. Kind of helpful. Another thing, probably my most used command is conda info. This is a really helpful debugging tip. This will tell you exactly where conda is loading all of its configurations. So things like the active environment location, where your conda RC file is located, as well as the base environment, which channels it's looking at, where your package caches exist, which can be something that you might need to find to delete them for some reason, and where it's looking for environments on your system. That being said, I really like the Python command prompt, but it's limited. It's not like a git bash terminal or anything like that. You're not going to get that sort of functionality out of it. Here's where this other tool comes into play called the Windows terminal. This is something I use a lot on a Windows machine. And basically, Windows terminal this is what it looks like. It'll launch in your default terminal, whatever that might be, but you can drop down and it'll search your system for any other terminals on that system. So now you can just, whenever you're accessing commands like this, you can do it from one place. And now you can launch the Python command prompt in here if you wanted. You can see it opened right up to our Pro clone again. And we're exactly in the same state as that other command prompt. And let's say I did want to do some git commands or something, and I had a git bash terminal on my system. I could then drop down and activate it from there. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about conda environments. I will hand it off to Kimberly to talk about some tips and tricks with ArcPy.
You want to switch the?
Yep.
Okay, let's zoom in. Is this better for those in the back to be able to read the code, or do you need to go further? Further? Is that better? Okay. So here's just some tips and tricks for ArcPy. We're going to go across a bunch of different topics. So first, we're going to go over the ArcPy mapping module. So if you're coming from ArcMap, you're probably used to ArcPy.mapping. With ArcGIS Pro, it is ArcPy.mp. And this package will just be used to basically kind of do anything you want with your project, your maps, your scenes, anything all contained in that. There's just been some really cool updates to it within like the last few releases where you can automate a bunch of different things. So here in my code, I can, from ArcPy, just create a new map. I can create a new scene, globe, whatever I want, and then you can go ahead and add data from it. So here I'm just adding like a feature class I have in my geodatabase. You can add layers from like layer paths as well, and then you can even open the map view. So if I go ahead and run that cell, it'll just take a moment. We can see it running with the asterisk. And then, do you guys know how to open the notebooks? I don't know if you guys know, but we'll cover that in a second then. But we can see my map just opened with those layers that I added it. Just to backtrack a tiny bit, so if in ArcGIS Pro, there's a couple different ways you can run Python code. So you can come over to the Analysis tab, and then you can see the little Python. It's cut off because my screen's a little small right here. But there's either the Python window that you can open down below, or you can open a notebook that I had before, just like by clicking that or from the dropdown right there. But let's go back to my notebook now. So also with the ArcPy mapping module, you can also like copy items. So this is like any of your project items, so like layouts, many of your maps that you made. So if we wanted to like copy the map we just made, we can. It gets added over here. We can also see all of those other maps and scenes and globes that I had created in that previous cell. We can also go ahead and delete them, so we can see it was just removed. And then you can also do some project automation and like managing your folders that are in your catalog pane. So right here, I'm gonna create a new folder that I wanna link to. So maybe if you're like managing people's projects, you wanna go ahead and like make sure that they're always linked to a specific folder. You can do something similar to right here, just have like your alias, your connection strings, like you're gonna create your path. This would be the file path all the way up to that folder. So once I run this, we'll see the data folder get added right here on the side, and so on. So like you can then access all of like your data within there. So that's just really nice within the ArcPy mapping module. You can always go check out. There's a lot of things that keep getting added. These are just some of the cool things that I thought might be useful. And then, so next, like there's something that we call the SIM. This is the cartographic information model. This could be a whole presentation in itself, just trying to figure out like, there's tons that you can do. So you're basically working with like the JSON like level of like your map or your layers, any of that. You can change symbology, you can change like your renderers, you can do a ton. So right here, I'm just going to do a really quick update to show you. So on here, I have my cities in one of my maps, and then I'm just going to change it so that I can add labels. So this is the map initially. We just have our city points. And accessing the sim of that cities layer. So I'm just going to get the definition with v3, so that's version 3 because it's ArcGIS Pro 3.0. If you're on like 2, it'll be v2. And then I'm just going to change the layer visibility to true so we can run this. So every time you're using the sim, you'll need to get that definition, and then you can make all of your changes. So this is where you can do symbology changes and so on. And then you will set the definition again. So let's go ahead and run that. And if we go back to our map, just take a second, and then now we can see all of the label properties. So also with the sim, you can go and set it to whichever field you'd want to be the label. It was already like set to the default, which was the name. So that's why we're getting the name of the city. So again, like there's so many things you can do with the sim. Like you can go look it up on the documentation online too. So next we have newly, I think this was like 3.1, we added some rich representation in notebooks. So what this means, so if you have, if you're using Arcpy.describe on any of your feature classes, let's go ahead and give this a run. You will see a table that is actually quite easy to read, because before the describe object would just give you a JSON of all of this information, and that might be hard to parse. But now you can see it's like nicely like separated with different colors for the table, and then like different parts. You can like see the fields, you can minimize and drop down. And then if we scroll further down here, we can see it even links to the documentation for this describe object. So right here, I'm doing a feature layer. It will take me to the describe documentation for feature layers. If you're doing something else, it will take you to the specific documentation for that describe object type. So that can be really useful if you want to refer back to it. And then also another cool thing with notebooks is you can visualize like your maps. So if we wanted to create a map, we could and visualize it in here too. But we already have our other maps because we're in Pro, but that's more useful if you're in like Jupyter notebooks. But you can also visualize your geometry. So like right here, if I'm just gonna get geometry via a search cursor, and I just wanna make sure that it's the right shape. So here I have a highway that I was accessing from this highways layer. So we can just see the shape of this highway. Another cool thing that we added at, I think 3.1 or 3.2, I can't remember exactly, is what we call drag and drop. So if we wanted to go and open that data folder that we added previously, I have a Python script right here. So I can just take this Python file, drag it over. Oh, did that change? Oh, no, I dragged something else. Whoops. Drag that right there. And then it will paste the entire script of your Python file. So if someone sends you something, that's super fun to do. And then also you can drag from the catalog pane. Anything in the catalog pane will come in as a path that you drag. So this is what I probably accidentally grabbed before. I don't know why I can't drag that right now. Let's drag something else instead. Okay, that's really weird. This was working earlier. There we go. I dragged it in the wrong spot, but I meant to put it right here in my workspace. And then from the contents pane, maybe we need to activate that first. I can drag it over and then drag that to right there. Let's go ahead and delete this, and we will try to redo that one. There we go. I'm dragging it now. Okay. So now I've dragged over my GDB and as my workspace, and I've got my cities, and then I could just run this as a tool. And that was just super easy to do from a Python script that maybe someone else sent you. So similarly, you can drag other things or send other things to notebooks as well. So here I have like the geoprocessing tool for a buffer. And what if I wanted, like, if maybe I didn't know how to write the Python code for this geoprocessing tool? So we can go ahead and just fill it out in the field. So we're going to call our new one just city buffer. Maybe let's buffer everything by 10 and then choose our unit. Let's go with miles. and then it's like, I don't know what those are, whatever. We can just go ahead and then instead of clicking run, we can go and click copy Python command. So sometimes like on some geoprocessing tools, like I don't know how to write out the spatial reference that maybe is one of the parameters, I just know the name of it. It will actually paste that all as a Python code. So we can then go here and then just click Control V, and I've got my code for like my buffer with all of those different parameters filled in. We can see that those were there. There's other ones that were currently like hidden and stuff. So it's just a really cool feature. And then we could run that if we wanted to. Or also you can come to the history of where you ran any of your geoprocessing tools too. Like we have our copy features that we ran from right here. You can right click them. You can either save it as a Python script. You can send it to a notebook. So right here, if we wanted to, it gets sent to a last cell of the notebook with the code that we ran this. And then you can also send it to the Python window. So that's just a couple super useful ways to get code that maybe you didn't know how to fill out all those parameters when you're just maybe looking at the documentation on your own. I think that was supposed to go there. And then let's go take a look at a couple new things. So spatial filter, this was added at 3.2 as well. Oh, yep, sorry. It changes the, I'm sorry on the previous one. It changes the zoom on every single new notebook, so I have to do it by hand again. So here's spatial cursor. I did go over this in the plenary a little bit. So on search cursors, previously, like you might have to go through a couple different like workflows to get like your like results if you wanted to like go select layer by location first on like a geometry, and then you'd have to do your search cursor. But now it's like right here, I'm just gonna get like the geometry of this, and then on my search cursor, I can now pass that through as a spatial filter. There are a couple other parameters that were added to go along with this. So the default is the intersects type relationship type, but for the other spatial relationship types, there's also like contains, such as you can just change that as another extra parameter. So if we wanted to run this on, this is on this map I have over here, which again, I need to zoom in for you guys. We can then just like go ahead and run that, and here we have like 2,000 different schools that were found in that county that we selected with our initial search cursor. So this is just a whole lot faster than running like select layer by location or like intersecting all of your features. So like each geometry type does have, it has the different, what's it called? Like geometry tools on them. So like intersect, you can do like within, contains, all those on the geometry objects, but that can sometimes just be a little bit slower than what we have done with our new spatial filter. And then also we have our new refresh layer. So I might just go ahead and actually drag this down. So let's take a look at this map. Actually, I'm gonna go here and then just go to my bookmarks. It's not really zooming into where I wanted for some reason. Let's see, can I find Santa Monica? I think that's the right area, but I'm not entirely sure. What?
Right here.
Right there. Well, it was somewhere in here. I'm not sure anymore if that bookmark's not working. Oh, there we go. Okay, it works this time. Okay, so we're going to add a new school, and then we'll be able to see it was added right in that area because we were refreshing the layer, and then the map will refresh as well. So if you also wanted to maybe make some changes with the sim that you're doing, you could apply that symbology, and then you can use refresh layer and then see that symbology be updated in the map. So like this is just really useful. Like if you have a geoprocessing tool where maybe you don't want to create a derived output that's going to trigger a map refresh, you could use this as well, because like cursors in general don't trigger map refreshes. So this will be useful to run after any type of like update or insert cursor. And then let's go take a look at my type hints over here. So we did go over this in the plenary as well. I just want to show you a little bit more too. So also, if you didn't see the plenary, we've added type hinting to IDEs. So right here, I'm using Visual Studio Code. They're also added to like PyCharm. But one really cool thing is if you hover over anything, you can actually see those type hints as well. So right here, we can see the ArcPy as a module. If we hover over like the buffer analysis, we can see that's a function. You can see all of the different parameters as you need to fill them out. You can scroll down for that documentation. Our main drive for this was the data access module. Is probably one of the most widely used modules, and it didn't have any type hinting available on it. So if you just typed Arcpy.d, we wouldn't even see it, but now we do. Oh, one more thing to note is the type hinting will be available at ArcGIS Pro 3.3, which should be out in like a month or so. There are a few parts of this that are available at 3.2 already because we were just kind of trying to test it and kind of like proof of concept that it's useful. But most of this will be available the next release. So here, if I wanted to then go on my ArcPy.da module, we can see all of those subclasses and functions that are included in it. You can tab through down, or you can just start searching for one. So again, here's like my search cursor. And then when you open the parentheses, you can see all of the parameters. You can see that it's highlighting whichever parameter you're currently working on, the rest of your parameters, what those parameter types are. And then it will highlight and change as you go through your different parameters. So we can even do like our shape. We can go like OID at, and then if we continue on to like our where clause, you could also like use them as obviously if you're typing out your stuff as well. So this is really useful. So again, this part, if you're accessing these via the tool and then the toolbox alias, this is what will already be available at 3.2. And so if you hover over that, or if you just hit that open parenthesis, you'll already be able to see all of this information. It's giving you information about the all of the different inputs for those parameters. It doesn't have all of the info on the documentation page, so you might still need to refer back to that, especially if you want samples, but it's just a really good, like, easy access information. And then the same for if you have your toolbox dot your tool name as well. And then so for like some ArcPy functions, not every ArcPy function will have a string literal for some parameters, and then you don't have to go to the documentation for that anymore. We have this available key down, but again, not everything's going to have it. We do plan to continue working on this, and we're going to be adding more. So if it's not there yet, it'll be there soon, and probably like the next release or so. It's just a continuous project. So there's a lot that we do need to add. And most dictionary objects should have those dictionary key values as well, so you can just tab down. So again, just easy to not have to go back to the documentation to refer to everything. But I do think if you hover over this, yeah, it does have some like more information on like the definition of these. You can also click to see real world examples, and it brings it right up here in Visual Studio Code. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, let's go ahead and exit out of that. And then again, result objects. So like some tools do have different types of result objects, but in general, most of them are just the result type. And on those, you can hit that dot and you can see all the different properties and functions available. There are some, I'm going to skip to right here. So like I think this is spatial analysis aspect that returns a raster object instead. So those won't have any type hinting available. That is another area that we're planning to add more on in later releases, so it won't be available at 3.3. And then currently any geoprocessing tools that have like string literals as one of their parameters, those also don't yet do that. We're still working on it as well. But that's about it.
Great. So yeah, that's pretty much all we have for you guys. Like I said earlier, Python does so much out of the box, but if you put some extra time into it and you get yourself to that expert level, you really will see dividends. Easy to learn, hard to master. Let's take some questions if anyone has any.
Yeah.
Oh. Also, please share your feedback in the app. That helps us make these presentations better every year, year after year. This information is confidential. Connect with us on social media.
Anyone have a question? You can bring the mic to you. You can come up.
Yeah, Kim has a mic, so if anyone has any questions, she can kind of walk up and help make sure everybody can hear your question.
You showed a notebook that produced an output that had a link to the describe object, I think. Can you rehash how you got that?
So for that one, it was just the arcpy.describe, and I had passed through the path to that feature class in the geodatabase, and it brings up the table with all of the different describe properties that you would see otherwise in JSON, and you would still see it in JSON if you run it outside of a notebook. But yeah, at the bottom of that, it had a link to the arcpy.describe object for that feature class type. But that type will change if you're passing through any other type. So if you're passing through like a geodatabase instead of a feature class, it'll link to the describe help for the geodatabase, and so on for all of the different types. Can you go back to the QR code, please?
The QR code, yes, good idea.
Any other questions right here? Here we go.
The drag and drop functionality you showed in the notebook, is that available if we use notebook outside of ArcGIS Pro, or is that ArcGIS Pro specific, something you made for ArcGIS Pro?
Yeah, drag and drop, I believe, is only within notebooks for ArcGIS Pro. One of our previous developers worked on that, and I don't think it's available in regular notebooks, but you could always give it a try.
Yeah, I think it's just Pro.
Yeah, I think it was just one of our cool little added features.
Yeah, it's good to know that people want it elsewhere, so. Just curious, okay, yeah. It looks like middle questions.
ArcPy.da.describe doesn't have all the same functionality as ArcPy.describe. Is there a plan for when they're going to be made equivalent?
I believe so.
So like on DA.describe doesn't return any of the connection property information for your enterprise geodatabase, and DA.describe doesn't, but describe does. I didn't know when the plan was to make them functionally equivalent.
It's a little hard for me to hear you, I'm sorry. Were you able to hear?
Yeah, so the question is if the ArcPy.da.describe and ArcPy.describe are kind of get equivalent in the future, because I think right now, like, they technically do return the same objects, but just one of them you need to know all the specific dictionary keys for it. I think that's on DA.describe, you know the specific dictionary key to access. Is not? I'm not sure about that one then.
That might be, if you want to come by the Python booth at the showcase, I think we can get some people to look at that.
Yeah, we'll both be there, I think, right after this too.
With the type hinting, are you having to target specific IDEs when you release that, or is that a standardized thing?
It should be supported in any IDE. We've just only been testing in VS Code and PyCharm. Yeah.
We've heard some people say it works in idle, but we're not sure about that.
Do you know anything that it doesn't work in?
Which what? Sorry?
Do you know anything that doesn't work in?
Do we know of any it doesn't work in?
Sorry, I can't hear you. One.
Do we know of any IDEs that it doesn't work in? I don't.
Oh, no, I don't know if that it just doesn't support. Yeah. I mean, maybe more simple things like PyScripter. I'm not sure if it would work in there. I haven't checked on that project in a while.
Documentation that you're providing as part of the package? Is that how it's?
How is it integrated into the IDE?
So the IDE itself has usually an IntelliSense like built into it, and it's just jumping into our code and seeing that we already have that provided. Yeah.
You're providing the documentation actually in your code.
Sorry, what was that?